Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. Saturday, February 21st, 2026. So I had another heart racing episode. My heartbeat got up to 250 beats a minute, and my normal heart rate is about 80. So um, it happened last night, Friday night, around 11 o'clock. And it went on for about, I don't know, 45 minutes, an hour. It stopped. My heart went back to its normal beating, and then it went back up, which was particularly sucky. It was easier to go through the second time, but I freaked out when I saw how fast it was beating because we had a stethoscope, and I could hear my heart beating really fast the first time. And then my wife, she had gotten us this finger stick, which measures your pulse and your oxygen levels, which would have been helpful when we had COVID. And so she found this thing, and we got it. And so I put it on, and when I saw 250, I kind of flipped out. And then I'm thinking I have to go to the hospital, which I really didn't want to do. And so my wife and I talked about it. She was helpful. She came up with some ideas. I ended up taking putting some melatonin cream on. Again, I'm not, this is just what I did. I'm not giving medical advice here, but we have this melatonin cream, and that seemed to help when I put it on. The first day I had it, the heart raced, and then my heartbeat was elevated to like 100 and something, 20 or something, which was high for me. Maybe like my wife had written it down, but we went to the doctor at 2, and it happened at like 9 in the morning. So my heart, my heart was elevated that whole time. And then I went, did the acupuncture, and I was laying on the table. I don't know if I told people this before, but, and I had laid face down. I've done acupuncture before. When I lived in New Mexico, there was Santa Fe. There was 3 or 4 acupuncture schools there. I think 3, and they tested their students, like all of them. They went to this. They had some board, and my family knew the woman who ran it, and she wanted to find test patients. And I was a liver type, like they have different types. Um, so I know a lot about that. Then I made an EFT thing, which EFT, I think it was called, emotional freedom technique. Because I had this counseling book, and I was creating this sort of counseling system. And this emotional freedom technique was something we were supposed to tap on these points, these meridians, and give affirmations. I never found it to work like the way that they said. Like it had subtle benefits. And so, but I changed it and brought in heart based, because some scars impressions are there in the heart, right? The heart region, the etheric heart region, and the Sajmark system. And so I changed it. I made a heart-centered EFT, which would have been great if it worked. But and then I ended up not pursuing that counseling thing and started doing this phase 2, which was Pockets of the Future, right? This YouTube channel. I had this this I was downloaded this like spiritual package, which started off as Shruti counseling. It was it's called the Shruti in Sanskrit. Like I had this this program that was downloaded into my system, and during a meditative sitting, and all this stuff came from that Pockets of the Future and these other things. But I was in with this acupuncturist, and she, an Asian woman. Her first language is not English, but and she thought I was somebody else, I think, and I was face down, and I don't like putting pressure on my chest when this is before I had the whole thing with the rapid heartbeat. But I was having trouble breathing. I didn't like that, and you sit there for a while. But when I went in the second time after the heart thing, she put a bunch of the needles in the heart meridian points, and I felt horrible. Like it was just icky. Um, I was laying on my back, but before I did that, I had to take my socks off. I was on the table, and she left the room, and I threw my socks towards my shoes, and they were about 15 feet away, and one of my socks just landed in my shoe. I wasn't even trying to get it in. And I was like, all right, I think this is going to be fine. Like, it was an amazing shot. Like, and so I did the acupuncture, and like what they do there is they put the needles in. So I went there after having COVID 2020. And and my wife had already done this, like she had started this program again. And then I thought, because of my heart issues, that I would, the irregular heartbeat, I would, get some testing and stuff. And I'd been on my mind to do that for a while. And so she had already done this. This is a new acupuncturist. There's a guy who's the chiropractor who's also an acupuncturist, but he's, hired people to do his stuff now. And he's just more of a, he kind of leads the thing. He's now in his probably 70s. So she had really loved this acupuncturist, and she had, and I was on my back, and I just felt like shit. Like I just, and sometimes in the Sajmark system, you'll have these restless meditations where 1 minute it'll seem like an hour, and they're hard to get through. And I felt like that. And I'm laying on the table, and I'm like, supposed to be there for a half hour. Like, oh, and I, was a little bit anxious, a little bit, restless. But I got through it, and I felt better afterwards. And then my heartbeat went back to normal. And I took some melatonin cream, and that seemed to really help. And I slept well that night. And the next couple of days went fine. That was Wednesday, so Thursday and Friday were fine. And then Friday night, I, was experiencing this, and I put some melatonin cream on more than I normally would. I was doing anything because I wanted to, relax. And my wife had suggested valerian, which is valerian root pills, which is what Valium comes from. It's the herbal, less potent version of Valium. And it smells horrible. And it, it leaves a bad taste in your mouth, and it often upsets the stomach. Like, I don't even take it when I have migraines. Sometimes it helps with migraines, but oftentimes it makes it worse. And it makes me sort of dizzy and loopy, and just, I don't really like the feeling. So I only when I'm in like severe pain would I take one of these valerian root. And I took two of them, and my wife was looking through the things, and she said, some of the suggestions were taking a cold bath and coughing and some of these things just to kind of get the heart to stop racing, not stop completely. So I was coughing, and I tried to reset my vagus nerve, and just things that I had known to do. And I put cold water back in my head, and then it stopped for a bit. And then it came back around, like my heartbeat went all the way back down. Not like the other day where it stayed elevated. But, I was more relaxed about it at that point. And, I felt like the good thing was that my heart could go that fast. Like I mean, it felt really bad, and I was, felt like I was dying. Anything like that is difficult because it's it's like a crisis. But, my heart can go up to that level, because when I do exercises and I get out of breath, my heart gets up to maybe 110, 120. I mean, tops, probably not even that. So, for it to be able to go up that high and still be, fine, is good. I had some back spasm with it, like there's some other residual things. But, my wife was looking through the possibilities and asking me about the symptoms, and it seemed like it's a panic attack, which, I wasn't feeling anxious externally. Like, I wasn't having some fears. I was pretty relaxed, was in a good mood. We were having a good night, and I just, it was weird, right? It was weird that happened. And I felt anxiety when it was happening, because, it's something that would cause anxiety. But, it would be like on a subconscious level that happened, or whatever it is. Like, I don't know. Like, the problem is, and this is the problem I was having with this holistic doctor, is I wanted to put everything out there. But, like, I don't think anybody will be able to tell me. Like, there's no scientific, like, a lot of times when they diagnose something, it's based in other people having it, right? We did diagnostics for psychology, the DSM-5, and it's not a, 100% guaranteed science. Like, it's not even close to that, right? And people experience it differently. You might have a diagnosis of depression, that's a whole range of different experiences. People who have depression or manic depression or have a personality disorder, it's quite different for each person. Like, there's similarities, but, they're not. It's not like some, and even on the physical level. And allopathic medicine is good to get the scientific data and have, you know, the various knowledge of the components of the body, but it's unaware of the spiritual aspects and the other things of other ramifications and all these things. So, it's very limited. And I have a lot of things going on that, potentially I had this tooth, I've talked about in the past. It seems to be fine now, but it's possibly infected. Like it flares up every once in a while, but also it's a top front tooth and my bottom teeth are hitting it. And so that could be causing it, which I talked about before, or it could be infected, but it doesn't seem like it's infected. But if it is, the bacteria could be going into my bloodstream and that could be affecting my heart, right? There's the spike protein in COVID that's, causing so much problems, and, so many heart issues as well. And it seems to be messing with the rhythm of the heart, right? The electronic, impulses, the regular heartbeat, and these things, and this rapid heartbeat. Like, what would make my heart just do that? Like, what would make it do it? Like, what's a panic attack? Like, what causes a panic attack, right? Especially if there's no external stimulus. Like, if you're scared of water and you're on a boat, you're going to have, anxiety and a panic. You have some kind of phobia, right? You have one of these kind of attacks, right? So the reason I think it's that more than, because of not just the symptoms, but, like I talked about this big event that's going to happen. I have it up here. I have it up here. I have it up here. No, I don't. Where is this? Is it here? Yeah. Wednesday, February 28th, 2001, 9 a.m. So that'll be next week. Will be 25 years. And he says, in a quarter of a century, the Earth will experience a major turbulence. That will be beginning of a cycle which Earthmen will find very difficult to go through. Fire will literally beat down in certain parts of the world, whereas torrents of rain will pour over others. Cataclysms will follow one another for many long years, keeping men frightened. Many will turn towards the supreme God, beseeching his forgiveness for more and more aberrant behaviors, as well as for the maltreatment imposed on their nourishing mother, the Earth. The failure to respect the elements will lead to the effects generating terror among the population of the end of the century. In future ages, the present layout of the continents will be shattered. Maps will need revising. Yet the creatures inhabiting this planet will have more than enough to do in order to survive, rather than dealing with those details. Adam, ATOM, will turn against mankind, who will not have been able to harness it, and its lightning power will be devastating. The time for punishment for such a conceit will take place as hard as it can, and man, paying for his ancestors' glaring mistakes, will suffer without ever having any control over the situation. The transformation of this planet must go through all these cataclysms in order to be effectively completed. Babaji. Babaji was a second master of the system, and this was given to this French woman who, and then they translated it. She was a medium, and there's 20,000 of these messages. And this was a part of a small section in the first book that was released called Prophecies. And there's also many other things that talk about this period of time in the future. And so, I have talked about how in the past there was 9/11 happened, and I was really feeling unsettled like 2 weeks before. I had a really bad day or 2 days, and I felt completely unsettled. And then 9/11 happened 2 weeks later, and I was completely calm. On that day, I was just, unaffected. And this happened with personal things. A number of crises I went through, my family went through. I had, a bad day before it. Like a day where, what I should have felt on that day, I felt 2 weeks before. And so, I'm thinking this might be happening with this thing. Because there's no way to know until, things unfold. But we'll see how that plays out. There's also anxiety and panic attacks that run in my family. So my sister was a dental hygienist for a while. She worked for this dentist and got a discount, and my dad went in there. My dad had grown up in the 30s and 40s when they take pliers and yank teeth out and shit. And so he had some anxiety associated with the dentist. And my dad was a very closed up person, narcissistic and, kind of fear based or whatever he was. And he, it's not somebody we'd had conversations about. But my sister told me this. I think I was in college, so my dad would have been in his late 60s or something. And he went to the dentist's office, and he started having like a panic attack. His heart was racing, and he was like flipping out, and he couldn't go through with the procedure. It happened like 3 times. And my sister was getting mad at him, and the dentist was getting mad at him, and but he and so she told me all about that. My brother was agoraphobic. He came back from Vietnam, and he got married, and he couldn't leave his house. He couldn't go within like a 3-mile radius of his house, and he'd have these anxiety attacks. And eventually, he left his wife, and a whole bunch of shit like went down with that. But he seemed to get over that. My sister, when she was in college, right after college, she did internships as a gym teacher. She wanted to be a gym teacher. This is the same sister that was the dental hygienist. And my mom had to force her out of the car. I remember going to school, and she used to drop my sister off first. And my sister was freaking out, like she was having panic attacks. Anxiety. She'd go to school, and she'd do whatever she had to do, and then she came back. So, and I had some, issues with anxiety that for the most part have gone away. But, it's there. So, like, there's no heart disease in my family. I've talked about that. My 4 grandparents live into their 90s. My other grandfather, he fought in 2 world wars with the toxic fucking, he was there with the mustard gas and that shit in World War I. He was a fireman before they had oxygen masks, so they had to go in and fucking breathe in smoke. He smoked, and he made fishing poles and boats out of, like, toxic glue. And he died of lung cancer when he was 80. And so, his wife lived to 99, I think. And none of them, including my parents, had any heart attacks, any heart issues. So, like, there's that. And I don't know about the COVID stuff and the fucking spike protein and all this shit that's out there. Like, it's, I kind of feel overwhelmed. I'm still groggy from the valerian. So what happened last night, so my wife I went out and was in the living room, and my wife was in, bed, and I was just sitting there doing clean any anxiety. So what I'm going to do is, this is going to go in I have a playlist for, in case I die. And so, if all of a sudden I stop making videos, there's some videos there that are, it's a playlist. And also on the Gratefullness meditation channel, I've long wanted to make, the meditative sittings. There's 2 processes in Sajmarg meditation, which is now, I'm doing it called the Gratefullness meditation. And it's transmission and cleaning. Transmission is the utilization of the divine energy for the transformation of man. It's called Pranhuiti. It's God's love energy, and it can be, harnessed by a person who reaches a high level of spiritual attainment. And when somebody merges back into the source, has merged back into God and surrendered their individual freedom, so to speak, their freedom to do the wrong thing, basically, they can harness this energy and then transmit it back to other people, which is, the sort of what separates the Sajmarg system from these other things. It's why I do it, the transmission. It's been, phenomenal for my, existence. But also the cleaning, which cleaning out anything that blocks your ability to receive the transmission, which it turns out to be equally and probably in some cases more important, because without the cleaning, you really can't do anything because you're bogged down with your own spiritual grossness, right? And so these individual sittings that preceptors can give you, there's cleaning that happens, and usually it's just whatever's inside the person. But, there is specific sittings that can be done for, say, fear or anger. And I'm going to do a playlist for fear, and then I'll probably do one for anger and hatred, over time. And it was on my mind to do this, and now this is coming up, and I'm glad, because it's an anxious time we live in. Many people are going to be freaked out if the things start going south the way that, it's predicted in the whispers, the brighter world messages to do. So I've already made a voiceover this morning for that playlist. I'm going to do the first sitting today. Again, people who have not practice this system, there's an introductory system people should do first, which includes 3 individual sittings over 3 consecutive days. And it explains how to do the meditation, meditation on the heart. And that's the other thing, the Sajmark system. I don't know of anybody other than one guy who had a heart condition. So when my family, my first family was in Virginia, there was no preceptors in our area. So they would travel up from North Carolina or travel down from Washington, D.C. And there was people, in that region, there was about 15 people who did the meditation. And they would come and give people sittings. Someone would usually come like once a month. And there's this one really cool guy, an Indian guy, just great personality. And his dad was in India, and his dad was a longtime practitioner of the system and a preceptor. He gave these individual sittings. And again, we meditate on the supposition of divine light in the heart, God's love in the heart. And it's, the etheric heart, but it also has physical benefits. So his dad had a heart condition, and he was in his 80s. I think 85, but it's not 80, but and not 90, somewhere between. And he had a heart condition. And Charji wanted him to, not give as many sittings. He would give like 8 sittings a day, which is pretty. When I was a preceptor, I wouldn't want to do more than 5. Like the energy that flows through, it's a lot. As you do it more and more, you can do more. Charji used to give 20 sittings a day, these individual sittings. But this guy was giving about 7 or 8 a day. And Charji wanted him to slow down, but he couldn't, because he just was into it. But he was the one person I know that had a heart condition, and I don't know, how long before he died or if he died of it, but it's the only people I know about with this big heart condition being a huge, so many people, the number one killer is heart issues. So, but again, there's not anything like that in my family, and then whatever's going on with me seems to be, the electromagnetic, the impulses that go to I don't know. I don't really feel like diving into it today, but it's something I'd like to get a handle on, right? To kind of get some understanding of it. So I'm creating that playlist for people, to want to have their anxiety and fear cleaned off. Master Charji, the third master of the system, he went to do some other spiritual practice before he found Sajmark. And it caused him to have a phobia, fear of being alone. Like it was some, bogus practice with a shitty guru, and it had a negative effect. And this often happens to people. They start meditating, and the person, things come up, and the guru is incapable of dealing with them. This one, all that Kundalini yoga shit that I've talked about, things like that, right? And, he documented all his interactions with his spiritual master, Babaji, the second master of the system. And Babaji was cleaning his fear. And he would say, he would give him a sitting, he'd sit across from him, and he'd go inside Charji's internal world, and he'd say, I cleaned 10% of your fear today. Oh, I've cleaned third, like there was like 3 sittings, and he, over like a year or so. And he goes, I've cleaned 30% of your fear today. And Charji got irritated and said, well, why not clean it all? He goes, well, why 30%? Let's just clean all of it, right? The reason to clean things without all at once, it can, I don't want to say shock the system, but, some things have to take some time. You can't do it like the first day, like you have to take some time to, clean things out. But anyways, so Babaji said, all right, sit in meditation. And Charji experienced a black face of his face, a jet black face being removed from his face. Like he saw this visually. And he felt this tremendous sense of relief, right? Now, fear is necessary. Like, there needs to be some fear just for self-preservation. And, it's also, fear can motivate you, can get you going and things like it's, fear is demonized, but there's, fear because there's a natural element, just like anger, there's a natural element, there's time and place, right? But of course, anger has been exacerbated, fear has been exacerbated, hatred, these things, to the point where they're detrimental and unnatural, and they're, they don't have, of course, there's no reason for hatred. Like hatred is, fear and anger are natural emotions, where hatred is something of human creation. But, animals have a fight and flight response, and there's these things, right? There's whatever there But there is the anxiety that people experience, and so there'll be this playlist on the gratefulness meditation. There'll be series of these meditative sittings to help people, to clean out, help people get to remove this whatever it is from them. And I was laying on the couch, and I was just having this idea that if this is an anxiety panic attack, just to clean whatever's causing it, right? And so I felt like I could feel the anxiousness and some, that was there. And I dozed off, and my wife was worried about me, and she came to check on me, and I woke up, and my heart started to race again, but I was able to control it. I was able to calm it down and settle down. I was much more relaxed then. And then I laid in bed, and I was, it was probably around 2 by then, and I fell asleep in a meditative sitting up position, sort of semi sitting up. And every time I rolled over on my side, I was struggling. My back had went to spasm when this was happening, and then a little bit, and then there was some, like there was a muscle pulled in my arm. I don't know if it's an artery thing or something, but I was just uncomfortable, and I just and then you just worry about the thing coming back around. I was worried about waking up and having the heart race. But after like waking up and meditating and doing cleaning and all these things, I did it sitting earlier that night, and so to help with the cleaning process. And so that was my thing, and I'm trying to figure out what it is and why it's happening. But the good news is my heart can get up to that rate, get up to a high rate, and not it didn't explode or whatever. And you have these moments in life where you're like, I might die, like I'm either going to die or this is going to get better. And I didn't die, and so and I don't know if this is gonna, how many more of these events I'm gonna have to go through. I really can't take much more of them. I physically, it's draining. There's a lot of things that I'm doing differently now. There's a lot of possibilities of why this is happening. I didn't have a stroke, and I don't think it was a heart attack. And if it was, it's whatever. Like I'm 61 years old, and I haven't had cancer. I haven't I haven't had a major health. I've been COVID. I got food poisoning in India, which was really bad. I got mono when I was a kid, and I got COVID. Of course, I've had migraine headaches. It almost feels like this is a migraine of the heart. Like I have some stuff that goes on in my cardiovascular system, like a glitching out, like the migraines and blood vessels and things like that, blue balls. Like things over the years. I've had issues where there's some discomfort and some congestion in the vascular. This is a part of my family, hemorrhoids. These things, right? Like it's I mean, not great things, but not and can be nagging little kind of problems I've had over the years. But and then this heart thing. But I mean, like I'm getting older, and your body just starts to there's things happen, right? It's just whatever this is that I'm going through now. But you have these things where you like your mortality is there in front of you. Like you almost get in a car accident, or you get diagnosed with cancer and you don't know what's going to happen. Like these things happen. And, it changes you. Like those days are big days and things that you go through where you remember them. And they have value because it clarifies what's important and, motivates you to, take better advantage of your time in these things. Which, I am probably going to do. Like I said, I'm a little bit groggy and sleepy. I'm probably going to make a little bit more to this video. That is, after lunch or whatever. It's 10:41. All right, so let me wrap this one up here. But yeah, it's not great. It's like whatever it is I'm dealing with, and I'll keep people updated. If I stop making videos for some period of time, it could be, whatever. I don't foresee that being an issue if I'm, still alive, but whatever. And there's this playlist, and I made some videos about that, and I'll, probably make another one in the next week or so. And my wife thought, maybe this thing has to do with Iran. That's, Trump is about to bomb Iran again. I mean, who knows what the fuck's happening with we'll see what happens. There could be a solar flare. I don't know. Could be nothing. Like, so all of those things are on the table. Anyways, all right, let's get into the other things here. For those of you listening to this in the playlist about death and dying, I don't know how much the rest of this video will I'm sure, I'll sure this theme will continue throughout the video, but it's, more the mundane things that are happening at this time. But anyways, let's get into it here. Okay, so I just did the first sittings for this playlist on Gratefulness meditation. I took some rescue remedy, which I'd forgotten about. It's a Bach flower. Some people sent me some ideas on the comment section. I ordered some homeopathic stuff. People had recommended hawthorn root for the stuff to do with COVID. So, I feel good about. After doing the sittings, I felt a lot better. And so, yeah, feel pretty good about the thing. We'll see if it, hopefully that's the last of the whatever I had, and I got stuff coming in for nervous system anxiety, these kind of things, and cardiovascular stuff. So, and I go see the doctor again on Tuesday. That's where we are with that. So there's going to be 3 clips of Lex Wexner. One in which his lawyer tells him to shut the fuck up or he's going to kill him. So this school, these guys all seem to have some similarities, right? These Epstein guys.
Did you ever witness Mr. Epstein have sexual contact of any kind with young women or girls?
Oh, look at this. Look. Watch him laugh here.
Did you ever witness Mr. Epstein have sexual contact of any kind with young women or girls?
Absolutely not.
Jesus Christ, bro. What's funny about that? I mean, the fact that you're even there being asked these fucking questions is bad. I mean, this guy's, how much longer do you think this guy's got left? I mean, they might punch his ticket like right after he's done with this thing. I mean, but his lawyers already threatened him. So, but just what an absolute ghoul this fucking guy is.
It was just regularly done. Answer the question. Okay. It was just regular.
I think he said, "I fucking kill you if you answer another question in more than 5 words." Holy fucking, look at this fucking. Jesus Christ. I already saw this, but look at this fucking ghoul here and all this stuff. I mean, people don't see the big fucking picture here. Like, these people are making decisions that affect your lives. These are fucking people with money and power that are instrumental in shaping the lives of everyone in the country, the policies, the laws, the economic policies, the advertising, the moral direction the country's going in. And, people don't recognize how fucking ghoulish these people are. You see these people in power and like they're the worst of the worst, right? And, they hide themselves, but you could see it. I mean, they're not honest about certain things, but you could see it in them. And holy shit, right? This is so fucking bad. Okay, Tucker Carlson had whatever that fucking guy's name is. He's the ambassador of Israel, like it's Mike Huckabee. And I guess Mike Huckabee talks about how, there's this line in the Bible that you should be, everyone should be in service of Israel, right? It was the line that Charlie Kirk used, that it says in the Bible, and not just, it was what Ted Cruz said. Remember, Tucker Carlson, he's a piece of shit shill, but he really fucking tore Ted Cruz up. So I'd be interested in seeing the Mike Huckabee thing when I have the time to do it. Nothing's going to come of it, but it's interesting. And again, this is people displaying themselves. But that's the thing that they say, these Christians, that you're ordered to, to serve the land of Israel, which is fucked up. Like, it's just another way the Bible's fucked. It's just another way that the Christian religion is fucked, right? You don't serve a land, and you don't fucking. It didn't mean God gave a blank check. Of course, God didn't say that. It's not coming from God at all. But God wouldn't give a blank check for Israel to do whatever fuck it does to, the Palestinian people or anybody else, right? But you know, these people who are, again, this is an ambassador to Israel from America, and so you know it's and a lot of these guys are so unlikable, which is a lot of these guys are being Epsteined, and you know there's a lot going on here, and I don't think it's not intentional. Like you know, it's yes, it's the year of accountability, but also it seems like you know why put this guy out there, this unlikable fuck? Why would this guy be? You know, he can't build an audience. Who likes this guy? Who listens to this guy? Right? Who's like, oh my god, I can't wait to hear what Ben Shapiro has to say. Right? I mean, who would say that? Like, how fucked would you be if you thought this guy was quality content?
I think that on a sort of public policy level, reparative policies don't tend to be nearly as effective as people want them to be, historically speaking.
They work for Jewish people.
In what way?
Jewish people have received reparations.
You mean Holocaust reparations, for example, from Germany? So I think that first of all, that there was like a gigantic fight actually in Israel over whether Holocaust survivors should accept reparations from Germany, because the idea was that it's allowing them to expiate their sins of the past, and they shouldn't be allowed to expiate those sins. And it's
Okay, so they accepted the money, bro.
allowing them to sort of buy off the history for 50 grand or whatever it is. But that is not the reason why Israel has become successful economically. Like just on a success level, the reality is that cutting people checks rarely makes them more successful from the government. What do you
mean? You're fucking, it's a welfare state. If it wasn't for America propping Israel up, they'd be fucked in every possible way. Like everyone fucking knows that, right? That's like, you know, they're accepting welfare checks right now from America, bro. Have Israel give back all the money that it's taken from America and get no more money from America. No more foreign aid, right? And all the money that people who have dual citizenship make in America and then send back to Israel. I mean, and just all the ways that Israel has advantages economically because of just its relationship with America and powerful Jewish people or pro-Zionist people in these positions in government and business and these other things. They don't have like a great GDP. I mean, they don't have anything there to sell. They don't have oil. They don't have anything. Resources, small country.
makes people more successful is a determined attempt to become the things that the meritocracy demands of you. Right? So there were no long scale.
I think the U.S. foreign assistance for Israel has helped financially.
Well, I mean, the U.S. foreign assistance for Israel actually is a bargain for the United States because Israel.
It's a bargain. It's a fucking bargain for the United States. It's a fucking bargain.
Doesn't need the money. I've said this before.
Well,
Israel,
give it to us.
Israel does not need the money.
We'll take it.
That's fine.
The black community would gladly take it.
That's in it.
I can't speak for everybody.
It's like $3 billion a year. We should point out at this point that we spend, I think, $6 billion a year on our military bases in Japan, $5 billion a year on our military bases in Germany. We spend an awful lot of money. That helps an awful lot of other countries. Israel has to spend all of that money, by the way, in the United States on military product. So all of the money that we send to, we actually don't send money to Israel. We send military product to Israel.
Yeah, okay. That's money, bro. and
is made in the United States. And so it actually is a subsidy to the American defense industry. And there is a deal with Israel where Israel does intelligence sharing and also develops its own tech and can't disseminate it to the world. So, for example,
it's amazing. Like, Israel is fucking, it's a bargain for us. It's not welfare state. And it's not just the fucking military. There's lots of monies that go there.
Helmets that our F-35 pilots use, those are Israeli developed helmets, like that we can see over the horizon, for example. That's because Israel developed technological add-ons. So the idea that this is sort of like a zero sum, the money goes out, we get nothing back, that's actually not true.
It's not true. Okay, bro. Israel would not exist without America. Like, that's just a fact. It's way more than $3 billion a year. And there's all kinds of ways that Israel gets subsidized. Like, if you really, went in and, like, AI'd it and got all the ways that, like nuance, like this. Let's, for example, my wife had sent me this a while ago, and I was going to put it in a video, and it wasn't there. Like, and then I had left the tab open, and then it, somehow it reincarnated.
We need America to wake up and prioritize Israel, and bring home Israelis, and make sure we stand by our number one ally in Israel.
What do they do for us? Why are they our number one ally? You know, all this money, all these people, all these they've bought these people, they blackmailed these people. You know, there's the support for Israel. Like, why would he have a support for Israel? I think he's Indian, right? In terms of his ethnic heritage, and why would they all our number one ally? You know, this shit. Like, you don't get that with $3 billion, and I mean, it's just all the ways that America props Israel up. I mean, it's just disingenuous, right? So my wife sent me the Cash Patel thing like 3 or 4 days ago. She just sends me a lot of stuff. I was scrolling through Twitter at the doctor's office on Tuesday, and the rest of these things I just saw that day. I mean, Twitter's actually a gold mine. You just scroll through there. I could find 10 clips I could show. It's going to make my life a lot easier. I never scroll through Twitter. I'm like, it's just so much better than all the rest of them in terms of me. I mean, Instagram is almost no content. Like, people send me stuff from Instagram. But if I just scroll through my feed, there's nothing. And Facebook, my feed, most of the truthers have left. Most of my friends, they don't even show you your friends' posts anymore. It's all paid advertising, AI fucking slop and shit. Right? Like, it's not even, Facebook isn't as shitty as it used to be, right? I mean, as good, it was better, and it was shitty then. But now it's just, you don't even your friends don't even show up anymore. And I don't think people even post on Facebook. It's just, but Twitter, there's these things, right?
Should Israel be expected to even pay 1 penny to rebuild Gaza at this point?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I'll tell you, if anything, there ought to be reparations to Israel for the extraordinary fight that they have had to conduct to get their hostages back, 252, including many Americans.
Jesus Christ. They need reparations. We should be giving reparations to a foreign country. So that was that Charlemagne the God was interviewing Ben Shapiro, and Ben Shapiro was telling him why reparations don't work. And reparations, you're not going to get reparations, right? Black people are not going to get reparations, or former slaves. I shouldn't say black people. People who come from ancestry of slaves. It's not going to happen. You're not going to get it. America doesn't pay that. Israel might, though, right? Like, so that shows you everything you need to know, and that's what Charlemagne was saying to fucking, Ben Shapiro. Like, Israel might, especially when this is the ambassador, and he's doing this based on being a Christian, right? Like, they killed Jesus, bro. The Pharisees and and again, I'm not a Christian, and I don't have any, I don't have a dog in this fight, but like, there's no way that they aren't at least somewhat accountable. Why don't they celebrate Jesus, the greatest Jewish person to ever live? I mean, who's greater than Jesus? And I'm not even talking about if you're a Christian. I'm just talking about if you think about successful people, right? Successful dead people. There's the biggest religion in the world is Christianity. So, in terms of Jesus's works, whatever's left in the Bible, I mean, again, it's all bullshit. I talk about the Bible and all those things. But if you just evaluate somebody who's successful, and I'm not talking about his spiritual success, because I don't, he did have spiritual success, but it's limited compared to other people. I'm talking about material success. Who's more successful than Jesus? Who's got a bigger legacy than Jesus, right? I mean, Jesus is, in terms of any other Jewish person, like King David, no. Like, Denny Navia, the guy from the basketball player. Like, in terms of famous and successful Jewish people, Jesus is the king. Like, Jesus is by far the best one. And they don't celebrate his birthday or anything there, right? They don't, why not? I mean, think about that, right? Like, they celebrate the success of Jewish people over there in Israel. Like, they reward for success. Most countries are very proud of their successful people. Why not be proud of Jesus? Why do you think they're still like, there's nothing that they say about Jesus there, right? I mean, what do they think? He was just a flim-flam artist, a scam artist, a grifter, like, a criminal? Like, what was there for you? Like, why wouldn't you celebrate him? He's celebrated in every other fucking country, right? There's two huge holidays in America. Christmas, the biggest holiday, and Easter, one of the biggest holidays. One of the big ones, right? There's only, what, 6 of them? Easter's bigger than Halloween, right? Or at least the same level as Halloween. It's bigger than 4th of July. What do you think? Maybe not as big as Thanksgiving? I mean, it's certainly, Thanksgiving applies to all Americans, whereas Easter is just for Christians. But, it's one of the top, there's 6 or 7 holidays, right? Certainly bigger than Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day. I did that for my wife. You know. So there's countries all over the world that celebrate Jesus's life in one capacity or another. Right? He's celebrated. And, they have Jerusalem there, and there's some, it's a tourist thing. But in terms of like any kind of acknowledgement of this guy that came from your heritage, there's nothing there. I said in one of my previous videos, why not? Why not? Why not celebrate Jesus? Again, I'm not a Christian. I don't give a shit, right? I don't fucking care if they got rid of Christmas. I mean, not that I don't celebrate. Jesus is a part of my Sajmark meditation. He's, he intercommuned and he does work now for the system. I mean, you guys may or may not believe that, but I do. Like, so he's like, and I had a dream with Jesus in it, but I don't give a shit about this stuff with the religion, because I don't think Jesus, to my understanding, Jesus is bummed about the way the religion has taken off and all these things. And, and if he incarnates again or has already incarnated, he'll be a part of the Sajmark meditation. I firmly believe that. So but in terms of his celebrating these people, who gives a shit? It's not even, unless you do it in a spiritual way, Christmas is very materialistic. It has nothing to do with Jesus at this point. It's more about Santa Claus. But still, they could acknowledge him in Israel. So I thought of the word influential right here when I was saying this to Gemini, right? Influential is a probably better word than successful. While Jesus is widely regarded by historians as one of the most influential Jewish figures in world history, the state of Israel does not celebrate or officially acknowledge him as a national hero or successful Jewish figure. To understand this, why it's helpful to look at, why isn't Christians asking this, right? Has anybody else asked this? As you guys know, if anybody else has said this thing, why wouldn't anybody else come up with this, right? It's a Christian. To understand, like here, whatever historical, in the eyes of Jewish majority, both the religious and secular, Jesus is generally not seen as successful. He's a failed Messiah. In Judaism, the Messiah is expected to bring world peace, rebuild temple, and gather all Jews to Israel. Because Jesus did none of these things during his life, he traditionally viewed as a failed Messiah. The reason is Jesus became a spiritual person. See, this is something that none of these Christians and none of these leaders and none of these fucking fake prophets and saints have. And I have it because of the teachings of the Sajmark system. That Jesus was born a Jew, but didn't die one, right? There's a saying by Swami Vivekananda, a religion is a great thing to be born into, but a horrible thing to die in, right? And so, it's kind of, important, that you do that. Like, you were born into a religion, and then you transcend that and become a spiritual person. Not everybody has the capacity to do that, but everybody can do that. Everyone has the opportunity to do that. Where you have, the religion is there it teaches you when you're a kid, when you're young, about the basic idea of God and the basic morality, and then you grow up in a structure, a culture where that's a part of it. But then you graduate to becoming a spiritual person where you have an internal relationship with God. And people don't understand that. Like, Jesus wasn't Jewish. So get rid of that fucking Old Testament, because that has nothing to do with, that's nothing to do with Jesus' teachings. Jesus' success is that he connected to God internally, right? Not that he did these things here. He wasn't a Messiah. He was a saint, right? He was a spiritual person. The core Christian belief that Jesus is the Son of God is considered incompatible with the strict monotheism of Judaism. Consequently, for most religious Jews, Jesus is a non-entity or historical figure who branched away from the faith. Yeah, but you're still bowing down and serving Israel because of some bullshit biblical teachings, right? And so for centuries, okay, I'm having trouble with my voice, so I'm just going to read this. I'm going to switch over to a voiceover here. For centuries, historical baggage. For centuries, the name of Jesus was associated with persecution of Jews in Europe, the Crusades, the Inquisition, and various pogroms, Pogroms, carried out in his name. Yashu versus Yashu. And, I can totally understand that, right? If you're a Jewish person and you're getting blamed for Jesus' death and, all these things the way that Jews have been demonized by Christians, I get that part, right? But, you got to understand that when Jesus evolved out of his religion, there was a break. Like he didn't, and I believe that his evolution came from India. Like he went to India and he did yoga. There's some evidence to support this, 2,000-year-old evidence. But the more important part is his primary teachings come from yogic philosophy. Like he became a spiritual person. Like he became one of these people who transcend their religion and meditates. Like he meditated on the mountain, for example. Like he was a meditator. And so he achieved what he achieved through meditation. He wasn't born the son of God. He achieved what he achieved through meditation. And when somebody comes back to that area of the world where Jewish power and Roman power were, there was the power of the Pharisees and the power of the Roman Empire, they didn't like that shit. They didn't want people learning about yoga and God inside themselves. And so they killed him. So that's his life, right? And so there's no connection between him and the religion. Like the Bible shouldn't be the New and Old Testament. It should just be the New Testament, right? And there shouldn't be a relationship. Again, whatever you want to say about it. The Christians certainly haven't treated Jews well because of this belief of him, the Jews turning on the Pharisees and these things, right? Turning on Jesus. Yashu versus Yahshua. In Hebrews, Jesus is often historically referred to as Yashu, a name that some scholars suggest began as a derogatory acronym. May his name be obliterated. However, modern Israelis and scholars are increasingly using his actual Hebrew name, Yahshua, to acknowledge his historical Jewish identity. So, this is why, right? Jesus, whatever he's become, they don't want to claim him. They're not claiming Jesus. So that should tell you everything you need to know as a Christian, right? Cultural taboo. Because of his history, many older generations of Israelis grew up with a cultural taboo about discussing him. So there's that, right? There's some other stuff about tourism and things like this. But it's right there. And of course, they don't value Jesus. They don't think Jesus is who you think he is. And so that's a huge deal breaker, right? Like you really can't have a relationship with a group of people, like Christians and Jewish people really can't have a relationship because of that, what Christians believe. Jesus is the center of so many Christians' lives, especially the real Christians, the good ones. And if they believe he's kind of he's a failure and he's a fake, he's a grifter, he's a fraud, that's pretty much of a deal breaker, right? Ben Shapiro. So another way to look at this is many Christian Protestant religions have a negative attitude towards Catholicism, right? Catholicism is the original Christianity. It's, St. Peter formed Jesus' church, which was Catholicism. And then Christianity, with the Protestant religions came from, I think it was King Henry VIII who wanted to get divorced. The church wouldn't let him, so he started his own church. The Church of England now exists. I'm not sure if it's, there's all these branches, the Lutheranisms. Martin Luther was upset that ordinary people couldn't own a Bible, based in these various religions. So, how many Christians really think well of Catholicism, right? Feel connected to it, celebrate Catholicism as the original religion. And Catholicism is a lot newer than Judaism and has a much more positive connection to Jesus than Israel and Jewish people do, right? And so, I mean, it's just right there in front of everybody. If the person you love the most, the person that you respect the most in Jesus, the person that you have the highest regard for, and you have a group of people who thinks he's a failure and a fraud, and whatever another number of whatever their feelings are is negative towards him, then how can you have a relationship? Like, how could you have a relationship with people who think so negatively about? I mean, I'm not a Christian, and I shit on the Bible all the time, especially the Old Testament, but just the Christian religion as a negative, as an indoctrination unit, as blocking people from their true spiritual goals and their true spiritual purpose. But I have high regards for Jesus. Jesus is considered part of the system, and I benefited from Catholicism, and I've benefited from Christianity, in many different ways. So I have a much more positive attitude towards true Christians and certainly towards Jesus and the good effects of Christianity. And I mean, and we'll think about the things that I say about it, right? That are truthful, like that, would be hard for people to take who believe that the Bible's the Word of God. But certainly, I I have a much more positive feeling about Christians in general, and I mean, anybody's a godly person, a true godly person, and the benefits that I receive, like I said, the prayers that I receive from Christians and my mom and my grandmother, and all the things I benefited from my Catholic upbringing, which was, I had no problems, mostly good things that set me up for what I'm doing now. So I'm appreciative and grateful for all of that, right? But I'm pretty honest about the things I don't agree with. And these guys think Jesus is a piece of shit, right? I mean, and you guys are, connected, these evangelicals, these fucking dopes. You're selling your own country out for their little country, and it's never going to be successful. It's unsustainable. Israel is unsustainable. It always has been. I mean, you can see it, and so, like, it's completely fucked. And the Christians have been duped into this thing, and you got these dopes that are pushing it, right? I just saw this. I didn't play the audio because I was in an office when I saw this. Red Rom.
Hello, Donald.
Come and play with us, Donald. Look, we have a friend for
You got one right there, dressed in red.
you.
Round and round we go, round and round together.
This is great. This is wonderful. All right. The quality fucking... this is where AI slaps. This is one of the good ones. All right, here.
New messages between Steve Bannon and Jeffrey Epstein released in the Epstein files have ignited something of a civil war in MAGA world. In one message, Bannon suggests President Trump should be removed from office during his first term for erratic behavior. The Department of Justice also released a 2-hour video of Bannon interviewing Epstein for a potential documentary. This is Bannon asking about Epstein's time spent in prison in 2008.
You're telling me that during that day, you never had a moment. You sat there and go, what the have I done with my life? I'm in a 6x9 jail cell.
You're suggesting I was somewhat depressed, and how could this happen to me?
I'm not saying depressed. I'm saying a moment of awareness of how could I get myself into this situation.
No, I would just say how strange that this happens.
It's pretty strange that you fucking commit felonies and you end up in a prison and you're a billionaire and you're a Mossad agent. How strange.
It's strange. People would either ask to borrow money or make some other types of comments about
In
the beginning.
What were the comments? At the beginning, what were the comments?
It serves you rich guys right that you're here next to me.
There was nothing about your crimes.
No.
So all this rumor you hear all the time about people in prison that commit the type of crimes you commit.
You mean pedos?
That's you're saying in your personal thing is not true.
No.
It was all because you were rich.
Yes.
And Bannon did not return messages from CNN, but said in a statement to the New York Times that his communication with
Bannon was trying to, somehow save Epstein's legacy and, trying to revamp him or whatever. That was part of his goal. Like, 'cause they're all pieces of shit, right? They're all fucking pieces of shit. And it's just to what degree? Because, when you go into this arena and people like power, I don't like power. I'm not a power person. But everybody can use more money, right? Like, some people they want to live off the grid, that is, but everyone can use a better tool or something, right? Everybody could usually use a little bit more money. And lots of people want lots and lots of money. They want to be really rich. And, power and then all these other things. But they come with a fucking price. And you can see the price early on. Like, there's things that you have to... I mean, the people with money and power are completely fucked. They're all fucked. And it isn't, they started off that way. Many of them started off poor, and then they got money and power, and it fucks them. Let me switch over to a voiceover here. I got two mostly positive comments, not neutral comments that I want to read in a second. But I was just talking about how power fucks you. I was talking about Steve Bannon, but all these people. And in the ancient Indian tradition, people lived for a very long time, and they would do these things called austerities. They would meditate for meditate or pray to a certain god or deity or whatever, some cosmic functionaries. There's these various, there's one god, but there are all these souls that hold prominent positions in the structure of the divine universe, and they work for God, but they also have their own personalities, their own identity, and these are what people consider gods, right? They are, they're instrumental in certain elements, like controlling the weather, for example, or, like in this case, Vishnu, the god of preservation, or Shiva, the god of destruction, or the cosmic functionary of destruction, right? And these Indians would pray to a certain deity. They would do these austerities, and the cosmic functionary, austerities were like suffering, like do something to suffer. And they might do them for, 100 years. And eventually they would achieve they would get what's called a boon. They would get a blessing, and they would ask for something. And the god, this cosmic functionary had to give it to them. Like, they had no choice. Like, there's a story where Shiva, this guy prayed to Shiva and said, he wanted the power to, whatever he touched with his hand, he would be able to burn them up, right? Just by touching somebody, they would like set on fire. He was just going around causing fucking havoc, right? And Vishnu was like, Shiva, what the fuck did you do that for? Because I didn't have a choice. He did the fuck out austerities. So Shiva came down disguised as a girl and, like a beautiful woman, and said, you can be with me, but you have to bathe first. And the guy touched his own head and fucking eviscerated himself, right? Which is a good example of these boons always turning on them. Because whatever anybody asked for, the boon always betrayed them. The power always went and destroyed them. And you can see that, in the mundane level, like we're talking about semi-pseudo spiritual powers and these fantastical things, but real power and real money, when people are obsessed with it, it owns them, right? It changes them. It defines them. And no matter how good of a person they started or how, what potential they had, it warps them and changes them, right? It's like the venom, the symbiosis between the venom suit, in the Venom movies and these things, whatever the power is, whatever it is, it contaminates the person. It just takes over them. And, it warps them and turns them into a demon. And, this thing's happened over and over again. There was this guy, Don Severin, I talk about And he talked to me a lot. He was from Canada. After I was made a preceptor, we had various conversations. He was somebody who very knowledgeable about the Sajmark system and then just, religion and all these things. And, he was offered a boon for taking care of Babaji, and he said, well, I want to see you get better. And Babaji said, that's not a boon. Well, you should ask for something for yourself. He goes, no, because he knew, because he had studied the Indian teachings, that whatever boon you ask for yourself, it always fucked you, right? Like power is just that way. Like power is something you should be very wary of, and if you have to utilize power, if you have a power, you use it and you get rid of it, and you use it for when you're permitted to use it. You do what you're supposed to do with it, and then fucking forget about it, right? But these people who, they become gross demon-like fucking ghouls. You see it with all these fucking people. It's just the evidence I show you every day of something like this. And if you really look at these people, you just study their faces and you see you read their condition. They're just, they've gone to the fucking dark side, right? They've been Darth Vadered. There were a couple comments here. These were about my health. What's this one here? This person said, to my understanding as a former paramedic, the chemical reaction that creates the spark that fires your heart and makes it beat is created between sodium and potassium. They cross a membrane under a static charge is built up creates the electrical discharge that sets up the heart muscle into motion each time it beats. I know the sodium potassium levels can affect greatly, or that is what I was taught. Anyway, that's helpful. Like sometimes I get long messages, and there's just too much information, and but that's a very helpful message because, my wife was talking about potassium because she saw this as well, and I don't know if this is true, but it gives me somewhere to look. I'm starting to research this thing. Somebody else wrote me. I think this person sent me stuff with homeopathy, but I just didn't have the ability to understand it. I really don't know how to get your attention, Paul. I'll give you another try. And they give some protocol here of, I can't even pronounce the things. But one of them is Hawthorne. It's a different name that this person's using, but I think it's Hawthorne, which somebody else talked about how that helped them with COVID. And so I ordered some of that stuff, and I'll see if that works. And this person wrote this. Hello, Paul. At 1:16:45 in the video, Erica Kirk finally admits she is a twat waffle. Oh, I forgot about twat waffle. I have some Erica Kirk. I didn't cover it today because I I gave myself a break because my heart was up to 250 beats per minute last night. Hello, Paul. At 1:16:45, you mentioned reincarnating in a future life. You speak of this fairly regularly about yourself, and I recall videos in which you have also discussed Babaji and Charji's previous incarnations. Reincarnating seems to follow a linear path through time, ? Around 134:25, you mentioned that when there is a mass population reduction, there'll be not enough room for souls to reincarnate at the moment in time. If a soul has no constraints of time, could it not incarnate at a different time where there is availability? If it were possible to incarnate in the past around a highly developed soul to gain that experience, it would be incredible. Curious about your thoughts and wisdom. Blessing to you and your family. Namaste. I don't really know the answer to this question because, some of this stuff, like the stuff that happens in the, what we call the brighter world, the etheric worlds, we only get limited knowledge, and there's, no matter how many channeled messages, how much, you talk, how much you experience in meditation, it's very hard to grasp, the full essence of it. Babaji could answer this question, but not in a way that people would probably understand. Like Babaji would go ask, Lalaji, his, master who was in the brighter world, or some person, Christians, some people from Denmark came who grew up as Christians, and they had some questions about Jesus. And Babaji just went to ask Jesus, right? He would just intercommune with these people, and he would be able to give an answer that way. But, his answers were often Yoda-esque. they weren't clear, like you had to think about them. You know, he'd give a three-word answer that you'd have to contemplate. Like some of Master Chargy's brilliance was he would take a one line from Babaji and talk about it for 45 minutes. And so, you know, like people said to, like he was in America or somewhere, and a person was saying, is there a God? How can you prove God and these things? And Babaji said, who is this God who is not? Right? How can you be talking about God if God doesn't exist, right? Like anything that, if you're using a word for something, it exists, right? At least on some level. Even fiction, fictional, like people talk about fictional characters. I mean, in that sense, Harry Potter's real, right? Maybe not in the true sense of the word, true sense of a lived a human life, but in terms of people, they all have some kind of image of Harry Potter that pops up in their brains when you say something like that, or the hobbits, or the things that are dragons, or whatever it might be, whether they existed or not. It's there on some level. When I talk about people not reincarnating here because they don't make the cut, they have to go somewhere, right? Like Chargy said that the best you can get out of Christianity was something called salvation, and that was 17 years before you had to reincarnate it again. And so that would, even though time isn't linear in the brighter world, souls that are have not really evolved get pulled into life almost immediately. In higher developed souls, there's some thought about creating the proper circumstances, and there's more effort, and there's more the farther you go, the more you're surrounded by a spiritual support team, and the more your success is guaranteed. Where if you're just getting yanked in and out of life, right, living a brute level existence, animal life and things like this, and so you just pop right back in, like you die and your soul takes the first available, whatever it is. And so if that isn't available, where do they go? Because they can't just go somewhere else on the timeline. Time isn't linear for the soul, but it is for in terms of your incarnations, right? Your incarnations go on a linear timeline. As a soul, you can experience all those carnations at whatever cyclical time that there's there. But, your incarnations, there is a time, linear time in the physical world, right? But souls that don't make the cut are, especially wayward souls that are going in the wrong directions, souls with heavy grossness, or souls that are just not mature enough. They don't have a lot of, it's just like anything else. You have to, you earn your capacity for better incarnations. Like I was talking about these cosmic functionaries, at some point, Vishnu won't be the soul in charge of preservation. Like they move on to higher levels, and then another soul moves up into that position. And you're given this position by, merit of your work and your spiritual evolution. You earn these positions. It's not like on the material level where there's nepotism, or, they put some dumb fuck in a position you see these, like, there's a really stupid movie. I had to fast forward to it. I don't know the name about it. But it's there's that guy, he's an Indian comic, he used to be on Parks and Rec and whatever his name is, I don't care. And Seth Rogen, they were in some other movie together that was funnier. Or, the couple movies. And the Indian guy was a guy doing like odd jobs, even though he has a college degree. I forget what this thing is called. He would do odd jobs for people. And Seth Rogen was a multi-millionaire, and Keanu Reeves was an angel. And it had zero laughs. It wasn't funny at all. It was kind of just a remake of Trading Places, where Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd, Eddie Murphy's a poor homeless guy, and Dan Aykroyd's some rich millionaire Wall Street guy, and they switch places. And it's kind of like that, but, just worse. But Keanu Reeves is a complete putz as an angel, and he fucks everything up. And you see that in movies where they have somebody's incompetent angel or whatever trying to, earn his, like that doesn't exist, right? You're only given positions in the spiritual world if you deserve them. And, everything is earned. And so if you fucked up your life, or, you didn't make the cut, you don't make the cut, and then you're fucked, in whatever capacity. You get what you deserve, and, And if desert, if it's not incarnating here because you're not good enough to come back to Earth, you're not on a, you didn't make the cut, then where the fuck do you go, right? And that's what have said before. Like, I don't know what it is, but it's not better than Earth, right? And so, when there's all kinds of variety of life here. Like, in America, we don't understand how hard life can be and how shitty it is for people. I mean, people have shitty lives in America, but these people that grow up in war-torn places with starvation, and it's just, life is just a burden, like people praying to die. Like, they just, misery and suffering, these types of things. I saw this special, it was like on elephants some years ago, and there were some elephants living in some part of Africa, and a lot of the water and grazing areas had dried up, and the elephants were visibly skinny, right? You can tell, you could see their ribs, and they didn't play, and they didn't enjoy their elephants are playful animals, and they have, they're just more joyous animals, and these animals were just, they were just toiling, they were just barely making it, between lack of water and lack of food and the heat, and just, and the climate had changed where they're, there's climate's change, right? Where there used to be water, there's none. Things used to, you look at deserts, and deserts weren't always deserts, right? And so, like, they were suffering. And, that's what can happen to people, like, that kind of thing. Where, when you don't have any kind of resources, it's just, you're just struggling to live day by day, and that's going to happen for lots of people. We live in a time of abundance now, but it's, there's spiritual depravity, right? There's spiritual deprivation. And every period of abundance is followed by deprivation. So there'll be deprivation materially, but there'll be spiritual abundance in the future. And so the pain and suffering of life will drive people inward. And so, like, that's what we can hope for. Otherwise, it just will be, a shit show. And this planet won't be worth saving. Anyways, let's wrap this one up here. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paramount, definitely important from the apocalypse and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.